They seated me by the cooler, right next to the trash bags. That was my place, not a mistake, not an accident, just the clearest message my family could send without saying a word. My name is Ilana Cross. I'm the second daughter, the one who always showed up on time, dressed appropriately, and carried a thoughtful gift while expecting absolutely nothing. Callista's birthday party was no different. I arrived precisely at 6, hair pinned, gold ribbon around the box, my name left off the seating chart, again. They had name cards for everyone except me. My father gave me a nod like he was greeting the mailman. My mother clinked her glass toward Callista without so much as a glance in my direction. The only seat left was behind the drink station near the folding chairs and spare napkins. And still I smiled. That's what I'd always done. Smile politely, blend in quietly, get overlooked without anyone feeling guilty about it. Across the backyard, under strings of fairy lights and laughter, Callista stood center stage, sequins flashing champagne flute in hand. She held the mic like it was a scepter. "I just want to thank everyone who made this night possible," she cooed, "especially my amazing team. And of course, my baby sister, Ilana, who's always been incredible at folding chairs." They laughed, every single one of them, including my father, like it was harmless, like it didn't sting. But let me ask you something. What happens when the woman they all dismissed turns out to be the one who signs their paychecks? What happens when the sister who's always in the background quietly owns the company they brag about working for? Stay with me. Let me show you what they never saw coming. The condensation from the cooler had soaked through the plastic table cover and dampened my sleeve. No one noticed. No one offered me another chair. I sat there invisible while Callista floated from group to group like she was born for it, collecting compliments like gold stars. Her laughter sounded rehearsed. Her thank yous were polished and camera ready. She was wearing a birthday queen sash that hugged her waist like it had been tailored just for her. Maybe it had. A woman in a beige jumpsuit leaned down beside me and asked, "Aren't you Callista's assistant or something?" I gave her a polite nod, turned back to my water. Didn't correct her, because this wasn't new. This was just another version of a very old story, one I'd lived my whole life. The one where I was always practical, always dependable, always dispensable. I was the child you only noticed when someone had to take out the trash, the one who didn't need applause, didn't need rides to rehearsal, didn't need her own birthday party. I remember being 12. Callista had a ballet recital that fell on the same day as my birthday. My mom said we'd combine the celebration. What that meant was Callista got a stage. I got a sheet cake with both our names squished onto one side. Someone brought her roses. I got a used book with the price tag still on. When the family gathered for photos, I stood beside her, just hoping for a moment of shared spotlight. My mother frowned. "Honey, can you move to the side? You're blocking the lighting." She didn't notice I stood there another 10 minutes pretending to admire the dessert table, pretending not to blink too fast. That wasn't the last time. In high school, Callista got tutors. I got a vacuum. She got a new Jeep at 18. I got a generic Hallmark card that read, "We hope you find your path." I did find my path. They just never looked far enough to see it. But tonight would be different. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels loud. It hums in your chest like a warning. That's the silence I sat in, still near the cooler, still invisible. Across the yard, they raised glasses to Callista like she'd invented success, like her name alone had pushed their marketing division forward. I watched as her co-workers gushed about her visionary leadership. One man even called her the golden girl of the department. I almost laughed, because I knew the truth. I'd seen the real campaign proposals. I'd declined the very project they were now praising her for because it was recycled, unoriginal, and ethically questionable. But they didn't know that, because no one had ever asked what I really did. Not my parents, not Callista, not anyone who shared my blood. They thought I worked admin, a desk job, answering phones, managing calendars. It was easier to believe that than to admit they'd never bothered to find out. They assumed my silence meant insignificance. But silence is power when you know how to use it. Years ago, when Callista was posing for sorority photos and hosting fundraisers, I was launching shell corporations. I bought controlling shares in 3 firms before I turned 30. The third one, a media conglomerate, quietly acquired the agency Callista now worked for. No one knew. I never told them. I didn't need to, because this was never about revenge. It was about freedom, about building something that couldn't be ignored, even if I was. But tonight, that silence was starting to crack. It began with a girl in a server's uniform. She passed by with a tray of mini cheesecakes, paused just slightly, and whispered, "I know who you are." I blinked. "I'm sorry." She straightened a little. "VJ Grant 2 years ago, I was a recipient." "Thank you, ma'am." Then she was gone. She didn't wait for applause. She didn't need me to respond. She just acknowledged the truth and moved on. It hit me harder than Callista's toast, because someone in this crowd saw me, not the version they'd written me into, not the background character, me. And she wasn't the only one. A junior associate I'd protected during corporate layoffs tilted her head toward me from across the patio. She didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. A ripple moved through the crowd, subtle, quiet, like a shift in current. People began to glance in my direction, not with dismissal, but with curiosity. Then came the sound, the soft, clean hum of tires over gravel. A sleek black Tesla pulled into the driveway. It stopped just outside the gate. Callista gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's Marcus. That's my boss. What is he doing here, Marcus Lang, CEO of the parent group?" Callista adjusted her hair, smoothed her sash, tried to perfect the image. But he didn't come for her. He walked past the champagne tower, past the photo booth, past the string quartet, and straight toward me. He stopped 2 feet from my chair, removed his sunglasses. "Madam Cross," he said with a slight nod. "Wasn't expecting to see you here. Not Alana. Not Miss. Not Hey You. Madam." And just like that, the room changed. Callista's smile faltered. Her champagne flute wobbled slightly in her grip. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just returned Marcus's nod with a quiet one of my own. "I wasn't expecting you either," I said evenly. He glanced around the patio. "Do you need a ride after this? We should talk through the Morgan acquisition. Their valuation's weaker than projected. If we move this week, we'll get leverage." I nodded once. "I'll find you later." He gave a crisp nod, then disappeared back toward the Tesla, leaving a wake of raised eyebrows and rattled egos behind him. Callista was frozen. Someone behind her whispered, "Did he say cross?" She turned toward me, her perfectly constructed mask cracking at the edges. I didn't smirk. I didn't flinch. I just reached for my clutch, stood up, and walked across the lawn like I'd done it 100 times before. But this time, they watched. Not because I was disruptive, but because the current had shifted, and they felt it. I moved slowly, deliberately, until I reached the long, white buffet table lined with shrimp cocktail and finger sandwiches. There I placed a thick manila envelope beside the deviled eggs and white linen napkins. Callista's voice rang out sharp and too loud. "What is that?" I didn't answer. She stepped closer, eyes darting between me and the envelope. "Is this some kind of stunt?" she hissed. "You think this makes you better than me?" I met her gaze. "No, it makes me honest." "You're jealous," she snapped. "You always have been." "Then why," I asked gently, "are you the one trembling?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The crowd had quieted. Not completely, but enough. Callista's posture stiffened. Her eyes flitted from person to person, reading expressions that were no longer worshipful, just wary. And then Marcus returned. He walked directly to the table, flipped open the manila envelope, and pulled out a single transfer document. "Thank you for signing off on the move, Madam Cross," he said loud enough for those near the dessert bar to hear. "It's official." Callista spun toward him. "Transfer." I nodded. "You'll be heading to the Tempe office. Smaller team, fewer spotlights, a good place to regroup." The silence wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. It sliced through every glass of rosé and polite chuckle in the yard. My father stood stiff beside the grill. My mother lowered herself into a white folding chair as though her legs had forgotten how to stand. No one moved. I turned to the crowd. Every time you called me too quiet, I said I was building something you couldn't see. A pause. And while you were making jokes, I was signing checks. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I let the words land like coins on glass. Then I walked away. Back across the patio, past the fairy lights, past the curated photo wall that had no pictures of me. The folding chair near the cooler was still there, still empty, still a message, but I didn't look at it, because now I didn't need their chair. I'd built the room. 3 days passed. No texts, no calls, no recycled excuses about miscommunication, or we didn't mean it that way. Just silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. On Monday morning, I was in the office before my assistant had finished her latte. "Good morning, Ilana," she said, setting a folder on my desk. "Morgan acquisition briefing at 10. Your team's prepped." I nodded, sliding on my glasses. "Thank you." Later, during our quarterly leadership meeting, a young intern pulled out the chair beside the window and asked, "Would you like to sit here, Miss Cross?" I looked at the seat. Too familiar. Too much like the plastic one next to the cooler. I stepped past it and gently pulled out the chair at the head of the table instead. "I think I've earned this one," I said softly. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and helped me adjust it. That afternoon, Marcus stopped by my office. "Callista resigned," he said, casually leaning against the doorframe. "She said there was a misalignment in leadership values." He smirked. "I didn't. I wasn't trying to ruin her," I said. "I just wanted the truth to matter." "It does," he replied, "because you made it." Before he left, my assistant brought in a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a folded note card. "Thank you for seeing someone like me. You gave me hope. R." I recognized the handwriting, the girl from the party, the one who called me ma'am. I tucked the note in the drawer beside my father's old wristwatch. One reminded me of what time had taken, the other, what I chose to do with mine. Weeks later, I attended a cousin's wedding. This time, my name was printed in gold on a front row seat right beside my mother's. I walked past it, found a quieter spot by the window, not out of spite, but because I finally understood something. You don't need their chair when you've built the entire room. It's strange the things people remember. They'll recall what color Callista wore to prom, what song played during her wedding dance, even the brand of champagne she served at her engagement dinner. But they won't remember what day I graduated, not because they forgot, because they never asked. For most of my life, I tried to earn their curiosity. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I stayed helpful enough, they might finally wonder what I was really doing. But now I know people don't see what they refuse to look at. And I stopped waiting for them to turn their heads. I made my own lane, quietly, without applause, without spotlight, and certainly without permission. But every once in a while, the truth finds its own way to surface. A month after the birthday party, I was invited to speak on a panel for women in leadership. It was streamed nationally. I didn't promote it, didn't tell my family, I didn't need to, but someone else did. My aunt forwarded the clip in the family group chat. No caption, just a video link and silence. I was introduced on stage as Ilana Cross, lead acquisitions architect for N7 Holdings, overseeing more than $400 in strategic pivots. The same cousin who once asked if I still typed stuff for a living replied, "Wait, that's our Ilana." For once, I didn't feel the need to explain. I let them sit with it, and maybe they still didn't get it. Maybe they never would. But that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. Later that month, the junior associate I'd protected during the layoffs sent me an email, short, sincere. "Thank you for saving my job. I hope I make you proud." She did. She does. And she's not the only one. The server from Callista's party, R, was awarded a regional scholarship this year. I'd recommended her anonymously. I didn't reach out, didn't need to, because recognition isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that reaches someone just when they need it. Just like I did. Just like I was. I think that's what people misunderstand about legacy. It's not always about a name etched on a building or a speech delivered under lights. Sometimes legacy is the chair you give up so someone else can sit taller. Sometimes it's the folder you leave on a table that makes the whole room pay attention. And sometimes it's simply being the one person who didn't look away. I used to think the worst thing was being forgotten, but I've learned something far more dangerous: being rewritten, because that's what they tried to do. To frame me as the quiet one, the helper, the secretary, the extra, to take my story and file it under someone else's spotlight. But I don't live in their story anymore, and I don't fold chairs unless I choose to. They called me too serious, too sensitive, too private, too much of a mystery, and maybe I was. Because while they were clinking glasses and toasting recycled brilliance, I was doing the work, and the work speaks louder than any toast. There's power in being underestimated. It gives you time, space, silence, the kind of silence where empires are built. I didn't rise in spite of their dismissal. I rose because I stopped seeking their validation, that folding chair by the cooler. It's still in their yard, still waiting for someone too polite to complain, but not me, because now I don't need a seat at their table. I have my own. And when I invite others to it, I remember what it felt like to be overlooked, spoken over, and boxed in. I make room for the ones no one noticed, the ones still building in the dark, because they're not failures, they're foundations. If you've ever been the forgotten one, the quiet one, the underestimated one, know this. You don't need their recognition to rise, you just need your reason. And once you have that, they'll never be able to ignore you again, not because you shouted, but because the silence finally spoke. And when it did, everything changed.